All right, time to dive into the world of finance. But don't worry.
You don't need that fancy Wall Street degree to follow along. We'll break it down so you can walk into those budget meetings like you own the place.
Now, that's what I'm talking about. You've given us quite the stack of resources, articles, reports, even some of your own notes. And it's all about finance, specifically for those of us who, well, aren't exactly finance gurus. So, what's the mission of this deep dive?
To extract the need to know, so you can confidently make those decisions that not only impact your work, but hey, maybe even impress the higher-ups a bit.
Love it. Now, you mentioned the HBR Guide to Finance Basics for Managers.
Well, the gold mine, truly. Really highlights how these fundamentals, they apply whether you're leading a small team or you've got your sights set on the corner office.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First things first. Balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements.
The holy trinity of financial reporting.
They each tell a different part of the story, right?
Right. The balance sheet, think of it as a snapshot. It shows you the financial health of your company at a specific moment in time. Like, say, it's the end of the quarter, and you want a clear picture of what your company owns, meaning its assets, but also what it owes, its liabilities, and what's left over for the owners. Well, that's the equity. All of that is your balance sheet.
So it's like a financial selfie, capturing those assets and liabilities side by side.
Exactly. Now, if the balance sheet is like a selfie, the income statement, that's your financial highlight reel. It's showing how much money the company made, the revenue, and then how much it spent, the expenses, over a period of time. And that bottom line, the most important number, net income, or as most people call it, profit.
Got it. So the balance sheet is like a snapshot. The income statement is a movie of the company's performance over time. Where does the cash flow statement fit in?
Ah, yes, the cash flow statement. Often overlooked, but I'd argue it's the most important of the three.
Mm.
Think of it as a behind-the-scenes documentary, revealing where cash is actually coming from, where it's going. It tracks those flows, both in and out of the business, gives you a real sense of whether you can pay the bills, which, last I checked, is pretty important.
It's like the difference between having $1 million penthouse on paper and actually being able to make the mortgage payments, right?
Precisely. And here's where it gets interesting, particularly for, someone not steeped in the world of finance. Cash flow statement really highlights the difference between profit and actual cash flow. That HBR guide we mentioned earlier, it has a really insightful example of a company that, on paper, looks profitable, but in reality, facing a major cash crunch.
It's like that old saying, profit is an opinion, but cash is king.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So understanding cash flow, even if you don't live and breathe finance, why is that so crucial?
Let's say you're trying to convince your boss to invest in a new project. If you can clearly demonstrate how this project will impact cash flow positively, maybe by speeding up those client payments, you're in a much stronger position.
So it's not enough to just understand these statements individually. It's about connecting them to those everyday decisions.
Exactly. Take inventory management, for instance.
Oh, right. Like that example from the HBR guide about Apple back in the 90s.
They had warehouses.
Full of computers that were basically obsolete before they could even sell them. Talk about a cash flow nightmare. Yeah, talk about a tough lesson to learn. Makes you realize how important managing inventory is, especially in such a, fast-paced industry.
Absolutely. And that's precisely where these financial statements come in.
Hmm.
They're relevant for everyone, really. Even if numbers made your eyes glaze over, they can genuinely help you make smarter decisions in your own little corner of the world.
Right, so we've got these statements, they paint the big picture. But how do we actually use them? It feels like we need to, really dig into the numbers themselves.
Bingo. And that's where ratio analysis comes into play. It's about making those numbers talk to you. Now, before you run for the hills, the term might sound scary, but it's really not. We're basically just comparing different figures from those statements to uncover trends and gain some insights.
So putting those numbers into conversation with each other, seeing what stories they tell when we compare them.
Precisely. And the beauty of it is you don't need to memorize every single ratio under the sun. We can focus on a few key ones, particularly those relevant for non-finance managers. For instance, the current ratio and the quick ratio. Those give you a sense of a company's liquidity. Can they pay their short-term bills? Essential stuff.
So like if I'm about to sign a big contract with a vendor, maybe I should check out their quick ratio first, make sure they're not about to go bankrupt.
Exactly. You don't want to be left in the lurch if they have a cash flow meltdown. Then there's the debt-to-equity ratio. Tells you how much debt a company is using to finance its operations. High debt-to-equity ratio. Red flag. Could be a sign of trouble.
Although, isn't some debt okay? Like if a company's trying to grow really
It
fast.
can be. It's a balancing act. Finding that sweet spot, we call it financial leverage. A bit of debt, like adding fuel to a fire, can accelerate growth, but too much. Out of control, just like that.
Right, makes sense. And speaking of control, what about those ratios that help manage day-to-day operations, like, what was it? DSO, days, sales, outstanding.
DSO, critically important. Tells you how long, on average, it takes to collect payments. High DSO means you're waiting a long time to collect that money. Puts a strain on your own cash flow.
It's like that friend who always forgets their wallet. Painful.
Right. And sometimes, like with that friend, better to get a little upfront.
Mm.
Avoid the awkwardness, not to mention the cash flow issues later on. Now, the flip side of DSO is DPO, or Days Payable Outstanding. This one measures how quickly your company pays its own suppliers.
Okay, so if I'm following correctly, you want a low DSO, meaning you're collecting payments quickly, but maybe a slightly higher DPO, holding on to your cash a bit longer. That's the sweet spot. It's not quite that simple. Look, while delaying payments might seem like a good way to hold on to cash a little longer, suppliers have cash flow needs too. Delaying those payments can really damage relationships and even your company's reputation. It's all about finding that balance, one that works for everyone.
Healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Got it. So we've got these ratios giving us insights, but how do we use that information to make, the really impactful decisions?
Think of these ratios like your financial dashboard, helping you pinpoint areas for improvement. Are you collecting from customers efficiently? How healthy are your profit margins? You can track these ratios over time, see if things are moving in the right direction, and even benchmark against your competitors.
Ooh, interesting. See how my company stacks up against the competition.
Mhm.
Are there any examples from, the research materials of companies using these tools really effectively? Absolutely. That article you shared about Goodyear is a fantastic example. They were struggling but turned things around by understanding and then acting on key ratios. They really honed in on their ROIC, return on invested capital, knew they needed to make significant
Don't
changes.
remind me, ROIC, that's...
Oh, good catch.
Yeah.
ROIC tells you how efficiently a company's using its capital to generate profits.
Yeah.
Goodyear used that insight to completely overhaul their entire supply chain.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Didn't they, like, completely align their operations with what customers actually wanted? Fewer products, faster delivery times, all that.
Exactly. Streamline their offerings, reduce the need for tons of inventory, which we already established can tie up cash big time. This helped them improve deliver times and ultimately boost their profitability.
Yeah.
They took ROIC and used it to drive smart strategic decisions.
That's amazing. They took something as, potentially boring as a financial ratio and used it to transform their whole business.
It shows how everything is interconnected. Customer satisfaction, efficiency, financial performance, it all ties together.
Makes me think that financial statements, they don't tell the whole story, do they?
You're absolutely right. And your HBR guide actually touches on this in the section titled, What the Financial Statements Don't Tell You. It's crucial to remember that numbers can be manipulated, and there are always factors that don't show up on a balance sheet.
So we need to look beyond the numbers to get a real sense of how healthy a business truly is.
Precisely. Things like employee engagement, customer loyalty, a company's ability to adapt quickly to change. Crucial factors wouldn't always show up in black and white on those financial statements, yet they can make or break a company.
It's like that saying, a company's culture is like an iceberg.
Right.
You only see the tip above the water, but there's so much more happening beneath the surface.
Love that analogy. A company might look fantastic on paper, great financials, impressive growth, the whole 9 yards, but if their internal culture is toxic, ticking time bomb.
So, alongside those ratios, we also need to pay attention to those less tangible aspects of a business: the culture, the leadership, the overall health of the organization.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, businesses are run by people. Understanding that human side of the equation,
Yeah.
just as important as understanding those numbers.
It's like they say, you can have the fanciest ship in the world, but with a bad crew, you're going nowhere.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect of financial literacy, particularly for those not swimming in spreadsheets all day. Understanding ROI, return on investment.
ROI, everyone loves to throw that term around, but honestly, it can feel a bit intimidating. Can you, break it down for us?
Absolutely. At its heart, ROI is simply a way to measure how effective an investment is. Helps you answer the question, for every dollar I put in, how much am I getting back? And this isn't limited to, massive company-wide projects. Thinking about ROI can be helpful in your everyday work, no matter what department you're in.
So how do I actually calculate ROI? Like, let's say I'm proposing a new marketing campaign.
It's all about connecting those dots, connecting your actions to the financial outcomes. Say you're pitching this new social media campaign. Instead of just saying, it'll increase brand awareness, which, don't get me wrong, is important, take it a step further. Estimate how many new leads that campaign might generate. Then, calculate the potential revenue from those leads. Now you're speaking their language. That proposal has a concrete ROI that'll get those decision makers on board.
That's so important. Translating those, what would you call them, soft benefits into those hard numbers everyone gets excited about. There was a section in one of the articles, I think it was called Speaking the Language of ROI, really resonated with me.
It's often overlooked, for sure. People get excited about an idea, but they get tripped up trying to communicate that value in a way that resonates with the folks holding the purse strings. Using data, clear calculations, it can make your proposals so much more persuasive.
Show me the money, right? Or in this case, show me the ROI.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful tools you can have in your arsenal, break-even analysis.
Break-even analysis sounds complicated.
Not at all. It simply tells you how much you need to sell to cover all your costs. That magic point where you start turning a profit.
So it's like, you know that feeling when you finally pay off a credit card, you're not in debt anymore, and you can actually see those positive numbers in your account.
Precisely. Break-in analysis, it gives you that same clarity for your projects, your business decisions, helps you figure out your pricing strategy, evaluate whether it even makes sense to launch a new product, and make informed decisions about where to put your resources.
Understanding the levers you can pull to tip the scales in your favor. Speaking of levers, I had something in my notes about operating leverage. What's that all about?
Great question. Operating leverage is all about the balance between your fixed costs, those expenses that stay pretty much the same each month, like your rent, and your variable costs. Those fluctuate depending on, production or sales, like the cost of raw materials. Companies with high fixed costs, they need to sell more to cover those expenses. But once they do, their profitability really takes off.
Higher risk, higher reward, like a high-stakes poker game.
You got it. Understanding operating leverage, it can really help you make strategic decisions, especially if you're thinking about expanding your business, launching a new product line, or even just analyzing your competitors.
Wow, this has been really eye-opening. From deciphering those financial statements to understanding concepts like ROI, break-even analysis, I feel like I'm speaking a whole new language.
And the best part is, this knowledge, it empowers you. No matter your role, understanding these fundamentals, it makes you more valuable, a more effective leader, and a more confident decision maker.
It's like we've given everyone listening a set of financial X-ray glasses. Now you can see through those numbers right into the heart of your business.
Exactly. And remember, financial literacy, it's a journey, not a destination. Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and don't be afraid to, shake things up a bit.
So for everyone listening, we have a challenge for you. Go back to those financial reports at your own organizations, the ones you might have just skimmed through before. Take a second look. What insights can you glean this time around? What questions will you ask?
The answers might surprise you. You might uncover hidden opportunities, spot potential risks before they become big problems, or even spark that next big idea.
Because knowledge is power,
Right.
right? And financial literacy, well, that's a superpower worth having.